Something extraordinary has been happening online. In spaces like YouTube and TikTok, which have typically been dominated by celebrities and secular influencers, a pro-Jesus, pro-Bible movement has been taking shape and is reaching millions of young viewers every day. Behind this movement is a handful of young Gen Z believers who are using their huge platforms to tell the world about Jesus. My team has selected a few clips of some of the most influential young Christians online. So today I'll be reacting to what they have to say about Jesus. Let's go.
Probably the most important thing to me.
Tell me right. I'm ready.
Haley is Christian, and when we started dating, I was not. I was atheist, cynical atheist even. Whenever I would talk to Christians, I was always very questioning their beliefs. I started dating Haley, and I would ask her questions like that, very hard questions, and I wanted to really challenge her because I loved her so much. I didn't want her to have this false view of reality. Conversation after conversation, she was very gracious with me. And she answered questions fairly logically. I would always look up debates and find.
You would try to debate her. You're like, I'm gonna slam dunk on you.
And what I realized though is my heart yearned for an answer. I realized it all came from a place of non-closure with my grandma. I just really want to know. This basically culminated to this day, July 4th, 2020. This is when my YouTube channel was doing very well. I had almost 2 million subscribers. I was making more money than I ever dreamed of. I was giving it all I had, and I received everything I thought I wanted. And so on July 4th, 2020, I was with Haley. We were watching the fireworks, and I started weeping. I started sobbing my eyes out. And I realized it's because I felt like I hadn't felt anything for 3 weeks. This was my finish line. All my identity is in this, and I feel nothing. Fireworks are representative of celebration, you know? And it was a crazy juxtaposition of I should be celebrating right now. I love this girl that I'm with. I have everything I've ever wanted. Why do I feel empty? And it was crazy, dude. And I realized I need to go on a spiritual pursuit. I started taking a lot less cynical approach towards asking questions, just starting to pray and starting to ask myself, what do I believe? And ultimately I did land on Jesus. And I started, developing a relationship with God. I can't believe I'm saying that, bro, because I literally would have absolutely clowned on myself 3 years ago. Whenever I started looking at who Jesus was and even the things he said and the things he taught, I realized wow, this is so loving. And if I can potentially have a relationship with him, I'm just gonna try. And now it is my source of joy. It is my source of love. It is my source of everything. Because I have that, I can go out into the world and do onto others what I feel I already have. It's real. I can't lie about who I am. And I can't lie about where I get the source of joy and positivity. Because it's actually such a disservice to people that watch. I realize look around me and we put a lot of people, even parent figures, on a pedestal, and whenever you see their brokenness and you see you treated me unfairly, that is not right. We were able to identify that, but it hurts so bad. And so for me, it's actually been so crazy to realize that in my personal beliefs, I feel there's a God who loves me even in my brokenness, and even loves the people who have hurt me in their brokenness. I feel I'm able to look at people differently, and even the people who have hurt me, I'm able to heal in a lot of ways. The traumas that I had through others hurting me, I feel I'm able to heal in that, realizing that they're gonna fall short regardless. That's just humans. It's human nature, You learn so much about yourself, and it's crazy. We're just talking about YouTube videos not long ago. Wait, I feel we are in a freaking...
This is a different video.
I know, I feel we're in a lounge, in a bar, just drinking.
I know, yeah, I forgot the camera's there.
I know, dude.
So this is Ryan Trahan. I actually knew who this was without even needing to look it up, because what's interesting about this guy is that I was watching him with my kids before any of us knew that he was a Christian. So I'd probably seen 20 of Ryan Trahan's videos on YouTube that made no mention explicitly of his Christian faith. And that's what's important to hear about someone like Ryan, and probably some of the other clips we'll see today, is that they're not out there as Christian YouTubers. They're YouTubers who have massive followings, and they also happen to be Christian. And over time, their viewers start to get a sense of their faith, whether it's through their own channels or through an interview like this, where Ryan is on a secular podcast as a guest, and this idea of faith comes up, and he just goes all in talking about Jesus and why he's so joyful and why he is who he is. It's because of Jesus. And I think that's an important point, because sometimes we don't have to be explicit Christians in your face with Jesus all the time to get the message across. Sometimes we can just be who Jesus makes us to be, and the world starts to see how contagious that is, just the joy and the energy. And that's what I love about Ryan, by the way, is just his joy and energy. It's boundless. It's who he is. And Jesus has just exemplified everything in everything that Ryan does. Ryan has 19 million followers on YouTube alone, not even counting TikTok or some of the other platforms. And I love the fact that Ryan is speaking and offering content to kids like mine. And it's not like we have to send my kids to Christian YouTube to get them away from the world to find someone like Ryan. He's out there where the rest of the influencers are. And I hope more and more kids and young people find their way, and old people like me find our way to Ryan's channels, because they really are not only entertaining, but they're wholesome and joyful. Ryan said something really interesting about his grandmother and how the unresolved pain from losing his grandmother was what was really keeping him from pursuing the truth. And once he started pursuing that truth and taking those walls down around his heart so he could really find what's true, that's when he found Jesus. And I just think that's a universal truth. I think that in itself is so common for people who we experience loss, we experience pain, we experience failure. And if we don't deal with that, if we don't open up that wound and just let it be, so that it can heal properly instead of just covering it up with busyness or alcohol or whatever we do, like I've done for a lot of years in my life as well. I know exactly what he means. It was when that woundedness was exposed that Jesus actually could heal it. And that was a turning point for Ryan. And I think that's a turning point for a lot of people who've come to faith in Christ. And it's a potential turning point for others who have yet to make that turn. So we've all got pain in our past, and I appreciate Ryan's vulnerability about that, but it's in our pain that Jesus Christ does his best work. We just have to open ourselves up to him to let him work. So that's an awesome start to the day. Let's see what's next.
I love God, but God, how I love the sin. I'm finally in control, like I can escape the stress, the pressure, the pain I don't want to deal with, and the freedom I feel. And the weight lifts for a while. It numbs the loneliness, the emptiness inside, and I know it won't last, but it's easier than facing what's really going on. Easier than admitting that I'm actually hurting. I guess I'll go back because it's familiar. Because honestly, it kind of feels like it's all I deserve most days. Like I'm not good enough to actually have more. So I'll mess up, feel guilty, and then run right back to the very thing that's hurting me. This cycle. Re-triggering thoughts I thought I'd left behind. The suicide, depression, the hopelessness, wondering if I'll ever actually break free. Drowning in the very thing that was supposed to help me feel better. These things I cling to, addictive tendencies, they haven't healed me. It hasn't made me whole yet. This endless pit of emptiness. But God, how I hate the sin. But when it's quiet, when the high fades and I'm left alone with myself, I'll hear you, your gentle voice saying, but my child, how I hate the sin too. So much I was willing to die to save you from it. But then you, reminding me you're still here, that you've been here all along, calling me back, not with anger, not with judgment, but with open arms. You see all of me, I mean the mistakes, the regrets, the brokenness, but still you still choose me. But you, with no condemnation, just your grace, your forgiveness. Not just once, but every single time I fall. You haven't just saved me from my sin, you've saved me from myself, from the destructive man that I am. But you'll remind me that I'm not my sin. That I'm only defined by your love.
Yeah.
And that is more than enough.
Dang. That's really good. Now it's dark, right? It's darker than Ryan Trahan's bubbly personality, and it's more high art videography. This guy's name is Matthew Ryan, and he doesn't have quite the following that some others might, but he's up and coming. And yeah, he's an artist, and he's real, and it's raw, and he's smoking a cigarette while he's talking to young people about Jesus. And some Christian parents might not want their kids to see or look up to someone who's, lighting up in the middle of their supposedly Christian testimony. And I get it. But sometimes, man, I think that attitude can really get in the way of breakthrough moments, especially for young people and for people that lean artistic. Sometimes the modern church, I'm afraid, is anti-artistic in ways we don't even see because we don't allow people to really ponder and meditate and really go dark sometimes. And when you read the Psalms, for example, the Psalms are very dark at times, and the psalmists wrestle with deep doubts, insecurities, questions, and really call God out on some things at times. And the psalmists seem okay with it. So why aren't we sometimes? That's what I want to say to churches that want to sometimes shut down voices that are challenging in some ways to the orthodoxy or to the moral codes that we want to aspire to. And And I just want to say to young Christian artists like Matthew, like, keep doing it, keep going, because you're reaching people through your art that button down, stale, boring Sunday church services aren't going to reach. And so I celebrate it. Are there quibbles here and there with things that people might say in these high art kinds of presentations of the gospel? Of course, we can pick it apart. You always can. This is a young man who's telling his story in a really profound and compelling way. And he's going to reach people and is reaching people with this story told this way that a guy like me could never reach. And so, you can just read the comment section on that video. If you follow the link in the show notes that we'll have, you can see for yourself the kind of response and reaction this gets. And the heart of what he's saying is really about identity, no longer identifying with our sinful nature, no longer identifying with our sins. Like, God, you see me and you teach me to see what you see. I'm not my sins. I'm who you say I am. I'm your son or your daughter. And yes, I still sin, but your grace is enough, more than enough, to cover up every sin I've ever committed. It's a beautiful message. It's beautifully done. And I hope that young man and others like him keep going. Let's watch the next clip.
It was on Christmas, December 25th, 2020. I'll never forget the date. It was just buildup of anxiety and depression over the years. And I had thoughts of taking my own life. But I felt like Christmas that day, interactions with friends and family that day just weren't the best. And I struggled with feeling loved. And I was like, this is the most unloved I felt on like a day where you give gifts and it's like the season of giving. And I'm like, this isn't cool. And it's like, you have the thoughts of like, oh, maybe I'm going to do it, like contemplation. But I was like, this is the day where I'm going to do it. Like, I'm fed up. And I'm just tired of feeling this way. I'm tired of feeling unloved. Maybe it's better if I'm not here. Maybe the anxiety and depression will go away. Like, I don't know. And so after we got done doing Christmas with our families or whatever, we came home. I love Waffle House. Waffle House is my favorite restaurant on the planet, hands down. And it was the only thing open on Christmas. Like, if Waffle House is shut down, like, the world's actually ending. Like, they're always open. Like, they never, ever close. And so I knew it was open. And I just told my parents, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to go get Waffle House for a snack. But deep down, I like set it. I had everything set. Like, I was set. I had it. Am I allowed to get detailed? Or like, how detailed?
However comfortable you are.
I just like wrote letters. I had like letters to my family and stuff like that. And like, I had like a note with like password on my phone and just where stuff was, voice memos, like all this other stuff. And then my grandfather, when I was young, my other grandfather, he used to carry this knife called a hawk's bill knife, and it literally, the blade kind of looks like an eagle's beak, like it just kind of curves and it's like a thick blade, and he had given one to me, and so I had it, and so my plan was just to take my life with that knife, really.
It's a brutal way to go out.
Brutal, but
Were you punishing yourself? Were you angry with yourself? Is that why you chose that type of like way?
I don't think... I didn't really like, I wasn't like trying to punish myself. I wasn't like, oh, I'm just trying to go out painful. I think I was just like, it was accessible.
You didn't know any other way?
It wasn't obvious. Like, it was in my nightstand. It was just like, I can do this quick and no one's going to question anything. Like, I'm just going to do it. And so I went to Waffle House to kind of get like my last meal and run away from my problems. I walk in, slam packed. Everybody's there. And I if you struggle with anxiety or depression, even when you have a hard day, sometimes you just don't want to be around people. Sometimes you just kind of want to be alone. And I walk into the busiest restaurant, Waffle House, I've ever seen in my life. And I knew that because I was there alone, I wouldn't get to sit at a booth or anything. And so I grabbed this random guy, like 30 something years old. And I'm like, hey, I'll pay for your meal if you sit with me. I'm just trying to eat right now. And he's like, okay. So we sit down pretty quick. And as soon as we sit down, he starts dumping his life problems on me. And it has nothing to do with Jesus. Just, my wife's divorcing me. This is my last time with the kids. She's taking the kids from me, taking my money. I got nothing left. I'm losing it. Last Christmas with our family, just going. And I'm like sitting there just thinking, you have no idea what I'm about to do, dude. And you're complaining to me about like your family situation and this and that. And I'm thinking, like, I'm about to go home and make a decision that I can't revoke.
Let me step in real quick. So I want him to finish this story, obviously, but this is Bryce Crawford, massive podcast following online. I first saw Bryce, it was, I guess, probably because I watched some of these other guys. His material was algorithmed my direction, and I saw him doing some like street preacher kind of stuff where he would do man on the street interviews with people at pride parades and things and just talk to them about Jesus. And he struck me as really kind of over the top a little, just in your face about Jesus, but not in a mean way, but certainly enthusiastic. And I didn't know exactly who this was or what his background was. He struck me as like a lifelong churchy Christian boy who was trying to tell the world why it's wrong. And hearing this context is really important. This young man was on the brink of taking his own life. That's how dark and how bad it was. And the details he goes into about that story and that day tells us that this is an authentic experience that he had. He was really that close. Suicide is a real issue, obviously a real problem. I think I've been touched. My church has been touched recently by people taking their own lives because they just didn't see any other way out. They just wanted relief from their pain. And it reminded me, this testimony and these experiences we've had here in Houston have reminded me of a quote from one of my favorite books of all time, The Brothers Karamazov, which is a Fyodor Dostoevsky book. And in it, he writes, "The world says, you have needs, satisfy them. You have as much right as the rich and the mighty. Don't hesitate to satisfy those needs. Indeed, expand your needs and demand more." That's what the world says. This is the worldly doctrine of today, and they believe that this is freedom. And the result for the rich is isolation and suicide, and for the poor, it's envy and murder. And this is the kind of despair that comes on us, whether we're young like Bryce or older like me or whoever. Like when we live according to the world's doctrine, this despair and darkness are inevitable. And that's what Bryce is describing going through. Let's see the rest of the story now.
And you're sitting here complaining about this. That's what's going through my brain. I'm like weighed down, sad, like eye bags, like sad, like my eyelids just sagging, not because I'm tired, because I'm just...
You think it's your last day?
Yeah, it's just like, oh, this is really it. And he's just talking, and I'm just trying to eat my all-star special. I'm just like, get me out of here. Like, I want to...
It's crazy, and I make jokes because I deflect, but it's the perfect storm. You know what I'm saying? It's the perfect storm. So please continue.
So he's just talking. I'm hearing some, not hearing everything, just kind of in my own lane. And then I just hear him say, "I love my wife. She doesn't feel the same about me. There's no growth in a relationship if the love isn't mutual." And when he said that, it was just like an arrow struck my heart. And all of that head knowledge I had about Jesus was just flashing in my brain. Scriptures I had heard. When I was growing up in church, I would memorize the verse of the week so I could get a prize out of the treasure box. All these scriptures I'd memorized when I was a little kid, flashing through my brain. Stuff I'd learned in school, flashing through my brain. The gospel finally making sense to me. Like all these things, just supernatural understanding of like who God is, because he said there's no growth in a relationship if the love isn't mutual. And I went, man, I must have felt like God didn't love me because he was pursuing me and I wasn't even giving him a chance to love him back. And I never experienced any growth in that relationship because I just didn't have love for him. And so I couldn't experience his love because I just wasn't even giving my heart a chance to open up for it. I wasn't giving my chance to like receive it. And so I'm like sitting there having this, it felt like the whole world stopped. And I'm like, I like literally feel, I've never felt this before. I literally feel the feeling I felt right now when I was sitting there, like just so real. Like I just like feel so bad. Like when people message me or like when people like talk to me in person, they say like, man, like I just want to like take my own life. Cause sometimes when people say that and like, oh, they'll say that to people and sometimes people don't understand, but like, it's just real, so real feeling.
Yeah.
And after I have this moment, I just kind of freak out because I've never felt anything like it. I've never experienced anything like it. So I just kind of like throw money on the counter, like to pay for the meal. And I just like walk out and he's freaking out. People are freaking out because they're like, this random guy, like blow up, like something happened. And I like went in my car and I was just like, God, if you're real, take away my anxiety and depression. Because deep down, like, I really don't want to do this right now. Like, I don't. And I was just like, if you're real, take away my anxiety and depression. And like since that day, sitting here, no more anxiety or depression. And that was like my cracked door to just like get in the way of like, man, God, like you gotta be real. And so instead of taking my life, I gave my life to somebody who wanted it. And so that's why I want to tell people about Jesus, not because I'm trying to I'm not trying to like run up my cards of like, you gave your life to Jesus today, check the box, give it to me so I can run up my stats so I look good. Like I don't care about that. Like I got transformed from something that felt incurable. And because of that, like I want to share that opportunity with people.
Oh, it's so important what he said at the end about, it's not about telling people about Jesus now is not about, racking up our stats or notches on our belt or, well, we won one more for the kingdom. And so yay for us. It's just an outpouring of the experience we've had with God. And the experience that he had with God happened when he realized that he hadn't reciprocated God's affections. So God had shown him so many, ways that he loved him and provided for him and took care of him. And never once had he stopped to just express love for God. And when he finally opened his heart to that is when all this healing and new insight came. And, I think it's hard sometimes for people who do struggle with anxiety and depression to hear someone say, well, I was all at once healed of all anxiety and all depression. I've never felt it since. And I think it's important to say, and I think Bryce would probably say the same, even if it hadn't been a once for all healing, right, of his depression or his anxiety, he still would have continued expressing his love for God because he experienced him in such a real way. And sometimes the healing doesn't come all at once. Sometimes it comes gradually over time. And really loving God means loving him unconditionally, like he loves us unconditionally when we're sinners, when we're saints, whatever. And so we love God when it's sun shining outside, and we love God when it's raining. We love God when we're feeling good. We love God when we're anxious, and learning to love God the way he first loved us is part of the kind of liberation and revolution really that this young man experienced, and that has in turn resulted in a young man who wanted to end his life and was on the brink of ending his life, having his last meal at the Waffle House a few years ago, to 93 million followers on a Christian podcast proclaiming the truth of Jesus Christ. Only God can do something like that. And if you're a young person or you have young people in your life that you love, I hope you'll direct them to Bryce and some of the others that we're watching today, because what a testimony and what an inspiration this young man is as he talks about Jesus today. Let's watch the next clip.
Putting your hope in Jesus is everything. For us, 5 guys,
Perfect.
I know you see us cheering, celebrating, excited. I'm telling you right now, that is an outward expression of our love for Jesus Christ. In that, if Dude Perfect ended tomorrow, if my house burned down, if something tragic happened, which is going to happen, I'm still going to be okay. Our guys, we're still going to smile, because at the end of the day, our hope is in Jesus.
Dude Perfect's great. It's a great job, but I'm sure there's a lot of other great jobs out there. My job does not make me happy. My job does not satisfy me. I can tell you guys honestly that Jesus is the only one who has ever satisfied me. If you want that yourself, please talk to somebody around you who's a Christian. I know they would love to have that conversation with you.
This is amazing. I honestly didn't know until we were researching some Christian influencers online. I didn't know the Dude Perfect guys were even Christians. I just know Dude Perfect is one of the biggest YouTube channels in the world, over 60 million subscribers, and they get hundreds of millions of views on a lot of their videos. And they're not out there like preaching the gospel on the streets either. They're doing silly things with water bottle flipping and with car races and all kinds of other things that young people, especially young boys, young men, are drawn to. And they're just having a good time, and they're being joyful. They're being winsome. They're always having fun with each other and with people that are on their videos with them. And I think that's another kind of testimony in itself. And some of us, we don't always have the Bible knowledge. We don't have, cover to cover, chapter and verse memorized. We don't have all the theological terms that are important to be able to unpack, to make the apologetics case that we all think we're supposed to make. Sometimes all we need to do is live the way Jesus calls us to live with the fruit of the Spirit just coming out of us: love and joy and peace, patience, goodness, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. That's what you see when you watch the Dude Perfect channel and a lot of the other Christian influencers online today. It's not always about the words we preach. It's about the lives we live, and how joyful and contagious those lives are. And that's what I'm grateful for when I think about Dude Perfect and the testimonies we just heard. I honestly didn't know these guys were Bible believing, all in with Jesus believers. And that's really awesome to see. This was awesome. I'm feeling encouraged and inspired. I hope you are too. Thanks for watching. Please leave your comments in the comments section. I'd love to hear what you think. Bye, everybody.